Hi, this is Paul McGuire with a update on what is happening in the world geopolitically and financially. And I want to focus in on the term precariat, which we'll get into in a couple of minutes. The Bilderberg Group has essentially completed their annual meeting, this time in Dresden, Germany. And for those of you that are familiar with Bilderberg, they are a semi-secretive, well, let's say completely secretive, almost completely secretive globalist group where some of the world's most prominent movers and shakers, the ruling elite, meet to decide the fate of the rest of us, although they deny that on a regular basis also. So at the group, you have huge military generals, like General Petraeus was at this recent meeting. You have people like Henry Kissinger, co-founder of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission with Rockefeller, and Kissinger has been a very, very strange and some say devious and evil globalist. And actually, when he arrived at the recent Bilderberg Group meeting, he was booed and called a murderer by a number of people. And I won't get into why he was called that, but there are many very strange allegations regarding Kissinger's behavior that cannot be proven, but would suggest, if they are true, again, if they are true, he would be a very, very evil man. Now, not every globalist is a very, very evil person, and not everyone attending the Bilderberg Group is a very, very evil person. But there are, among that group, a number of ruthless people. So you have the CEOs of the major multinational corporations, the heads of all the giant banks, are meeting at Bilderberg on a regular basis, and movers and shakers in technology industry, science, the media, journalism, so on and so forth. And they are one among many groups, like Davos, that meets annually, and other groups that, behind private doors, decide the fate of the rest of us. And one of their topics of discussion, their primary topics of discussion this year, was the precariat and the middle class. And we're going to go on in a minute and define this term precariat, which was popularized by a British economist named Guy Standing, who essentially has promoted this concept of a new class of people, the precariat, that live from job to job. But it's more than that. And we're going to get into exactly what it is and what it means for the global population, and why Bilderberg is very, very concerned about it, and why Bilderberg is concerned about the middle class. So when you see the Bilderberg 2016 topics of discussion, you have, I don't know if they're in order of priority, but they're all of these topics of discussion are of a high priority to Bilderberg. So number one is current events. I guess that's global and national current events. Number two is China. 3, Europe, migration, growth, reform, vision, unity. Number 4 is Middle East. 5, Russia. 6, U.S. political landscape, economy, growth, debt, reform. Number 7, cybersecurity. 8, geopolitics of energy and commodity prices. Number 9, precariat and middle class. And I'll stop there with number 9, precariat and middle class. Now, this definition, the precariat, is a definition, again, popularized by this British economist, Guy Standing, and several books that he's written. And essentially, it's the precariat is a fast-growing class of people who have no hope for a decent future, can only find part-time or temporary jobs at minimum wage, have to do all kinds of work for which they don't get paid, and according to Standing, they are a rapidly expanding class, both here in the United States, Britain, Europe, and other continents of the world. For example, even in China, which has just recently begun to develop a middle class, many people are falling out of the middle class and into the precariat. And the same thing would be true of the United States of America, although the United States of America has had a middle class, the largest and most vibrant middle class in the history of mankind for many, many years. The reality is that the middle class in America and Europe and other nations is shrinking due to economic pressures. And when the middle class is shrinking, so we could say one of the primary reasons that the middle class is shrinking in the U.S. is because of outsourcing, transferring of manufacturing jobs to new manufacturing plants in third world nations of places like Mexico. And a lot of high-paying jobs or good middle-class jobs are being removed because of downsizing, so on and so forth. So these individuals who were once in the middle class are no longer in the middle class, and some of them go down to what is called the precariat. And they are a growing class of people who feel insecure about their jobs, communities, and life in general. Depending where they are in the precariat, they are often paid in cash. And they can include gray market domestics who are paid in cash, those who are not technically trained, seniors who struggle with disappearing pensions, retirement funds, and savings, and soaring health care costs. It also includes single mothers who have difficulty making money. And it now includes, by the way, the millennial generation, many of them who were promised good jobs if they graduated from college and got a degree, only to find out that they can only find part-time and minimum wage jobs. And in addition to that, the precariat exists of all these people, many of them formerly middle class, whose jobs are no longer available. And you have men, for example, who were making really good annual incomes, executives, etc. But when they are tossed out of their occupations, they're now managing McDonald's, which doesn't technically mean they're part of the precariat, but McDonald's and lower wage positions like that, that doesn't create a vibrant economy. In addition, many people cannot work in full-time positions because many employers in the United States of America, people who formerly had good jobs with big corporations and big companies, found that the big jobs with the big companies, they found themselves let go from these companies only to be rehired back at a far lower wage and part-time. And the reason these companies did this so ruthlessly is by hiring them back part-time, then they wouldn't be responsible for their health care costs. And now by hiring them back at far lower wages, they can increase the profitability of their corporation, but they've gutted a middle class in the process. And the precariat class is of great concern to the elite and the Bilderberg Group because this group is angry, anxious, and alienated, and is driving the rise of populist politicians like Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. And in Europe, they're driving the rise of right-wing and nationalist politicians, which the Bilderberg and the elite do not like, because they want politicians, presidents, and prime ministers installed in nations who will do their bidding, their will, and who will go along with the globalist program. So, for example, you have Angela Merkel, the head of Germany, and her policies on migration and the welcoming in of this massive surge of Islamic militants, many from Syria, is very unpopular in Germany. But she does it anyway. Well, why does she do it anyway? She does it anyway because she's a puppet of the globalists. So even though the people in rising numbers cannot stand her, you notice that a couple of weeks ago she was voted the most powerful woman, I believe, in the world, according to Forbes magazine. So that's a little payoff to Angela Merkel for doing the bidding of the globalists and the elite, even though the people resent it. And all across Europe, the same thing is happening. The head of France, the head of Great Britain, the head of the Norwegian and Scandinavian countries they also are implementing policies that the grassroots does not like. But because they're doing the bidding of the globalists and because they're agents of the globalists, they stay in power. The same is true in the United States of America. You have the elite, the elite's choice in both the Republican and the Democratic Party, the globalist choice for senators and for presidents in the United States and other nations, but they're backed up by the powerful ruling elite. But they're concerned about this precariat class because it's growing, and they're concerned about the middle class because the middle class is shrinking, which is causing the precariat class to grow. So that creates huge instability, social unrest, and a lot of problems. But, the ruling elite knew that their policies were going to create this environment. They knew it years ago. They knew it decades ago. And that's one of the reasons you see the rise of the surveillance state and the rise of a police state beginning to rise, a decade or more ago, because the elite were preparing for social unrest, because they knew their economic policies would create large numbers of unemployed and very unhappy people. And so when it comes to seniors, you have them being forced to leave their previous health care, and they are being forced to accept new kinds of health care, which are rising. The new kind of health care now is rising as much as 60%. And that basically throws people out of the middle class. So these are some of the trends that are going on. Now, the precariat, as they are called, remember that in the 1970s, when Rockefeller went to China, that was the beginning of this globalist plan. And of course, the American people were promised through both parties that if they endorsed NAFTA and GATT and WTO and all these trade treaties, that the American people were told through the corporate-controlled media that this would allow Americans to prosper in the new global marketplace. I'm laughing because I remember the press conferences. Well, the globalists knew that was a lie because they hire very sophisticated economists. So the reality is that these trade treaties like NAFTA, GATT, WTO, and especially these new secret trade treaties, which nobody's allowed to read, they have destroyed the middle class. They have accelerated and promoted outsourcing and the transfer of manufacturing plants overseas by companies like Ford and many other companies. And they have caused the middle class to shrink. And they've caused the once good-paying union jobs to disappear. So you have a wealth reduction. And the globalists knew this. Now, the elite or the plutocracy, coming from the ideas of the Greek philosopher, these super elite, if you observe their lives, they've been buying up large refuges and farms in some of the most remote places of the world where you fly in by plane. Now, I happen to know of one particular filmmaker whose movies have been some of the biggest blockbusters of all times, and he has bought a very large fortified farm in New Zealand, which he can fly to if things get out of control. So the elite know, many of them have exit strategies to places like this, and the elite know that chaos, wars, and massive unrest are coming, and they are exploring options of escape or exit strategies that are being published. I mean, the news reporting of this is coming out in mainstream financial publications. And in addition, you will see the continual coverage of a new concept, which is universal basic income for everyone. Now, that would have been a preposterous idea, a couple of decades ago. But you have major respected financial publications, some of them conservative, promoting the idea that perhaps every single person should be guaranteed a universal basic income. Now, Sweden just voted on such a measure, and even though Sweden is very liberal and socialistic, they turned down the idea because the universal basic income, you get paid whether you work or not. But it is being promoted seriously. Now, let's say, for example, that the universal basic income, and let's say it's dictated and mandated by the United Nations, and let's say, I'm speaking hypothetically, let's say it's $30,000 a year. Perhaps it's adjusted depending upon the cost of living in the nation you're in. But let's say it's $30,000 a year in the United States. The $30,000 a year in the United States is below the poverty level, by the way. So if you have all these people guaranteed to make $30,000 a year, even if they do nothing, then you're simply redistributing the wealth of the middle class, and you're reducing again the wealth of the middle class, and of course the money of the elite is never touched. So this idea of a basic income was also proposed by economist Guy Standing in an article entitled "The Growing Precariat: Why We Need a Universal Basic Income," and he wrote it in a magazine called The Singularity Hub, which is devoted to the singularity and the science of transhumanism and robots, etc. So even futurists are picking this up. And one of the arguments and why it appeared in the Singularity Hub is that a lot of people will be losing their jobs because robots and machines will take the place of human beings in increasing numbers. People don't realize that this is coming far faster than they think. So people, in addition to the other things that are causing massive unemployment, many people are going to begin to lose their jobs, and jobs that you're going to have trouble believing could be done by a robot, like surgery and things like that. So a lot of the jobs that people think, gee, this is a really secure job because it requires a level of sophistication and education. No, you can be replaced by a robot. So it's going to have a real shakeup on economics globally. But under this so-called pleasant-sounding word, universal basic income, what you really have is repackaged communism. And when I was a kid, my father would use the old expression, there's no such thing as a free lunch, which used to be a popular expression. I don't know if it's still popular. But the idea was that you don't get something for nothing. And if somebody's buying you a free lunch, there's a reason for it. So if you're receiving a universal basic income, there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's going to be a price tag to it, and the price tag will be you will have to give up all your freedoms and rights and live in some kind of totalitarian society. Yeah, you'll get a low annual guaranteed income, which is not particularly thrilling to begin with, but in return from that, you will have to give up all your rights and live in a totalitarian society. Now, people who hang around smoking dope all day long and will not have to work and just, they can survive on their universal basic, and they don't care. And there's a lot of people that don't really care. As long as they can stay high and have a place to live and watch TV and smoke dope or whatever, they're quite content to be receiving a universal basic income. Now, the elite are also exploring other options regarding the war, chaos, social unrest, and violence that they know is coming. So The Guardian, which is a prestigious and well-known British newspaper, wrote a serious article entitled, "What if the mega-rich just wanted to escape the earth they destroy?" And it wasn't just The Guardian. Newsweek did a serious article. A lot of major publications did a very serious series of articles about it. How the wealthiest people in the world, some of the wealthiest people in the world, are already building rockets and technology to be able to live on Mars. So they talked about Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Tesla's Elon Musk, and Virgin Galactic's Richard Branson, who are uniting to build rockets and are planning to build colonies on Mars. And they're dead serious, and the rockets are being built now, and the rockets are being tested now, and they're far deeper into making this materialize than you may realize. In other words, it's not as far-fetched as you might think it would be. So remember that movie Elysium, starring Matt Damon, directed by Jodie Foster, and there's this giant artificial satellite planet that revolves around the Earth in an orbit, and all the elite live up on Elysium, and it's beautiful, and all their needs are taken care of, and through the use of artificial intelligence and robotics. And then basically planet Earth has lots of computerized technology and androids, but it's like one giant war zone and ghetto. But the point is that the elite left the Earth for a world beyond Earth for safety. And the question is being raised, is this part of the plan of the billionaires when they say they want to colonize Mars? I mean, Elon Musk runs around saying he's gonna bring millions of people to Mars. But when push comes to shove, I mean, many of the elite are fully aware of all these reports that saying all hell is ready to break loose on planet Earth, like World War III. What happens if World War III erupts in radiation, biological plagues, plagues and cataclysmic events begin to happen all over the place. That's pretty serious. It means the entire, it could mean the entire or large parts of the atmosphere could be filled with radioactive material. I mean, the Earth could become so toxic that it would threaten the existence of all human life. So these billionaires have the money to live rather luxuriously on Mars. So why wouldn't they? They're building the rockets. They're planning. They're not telling their full intentions, but it's not as far-fetched as you think. That's the whole point. Now, the Bilderberg Group, a globalist organization, in meetings in recent years, they have openly talked about and discussed microchip implant technologies with RFID transmitters. They have discussed their plans for a cashless society, microchip implants, and a one-world economic system, one world religion, and one world government. And the elite see trouble coming. They created the trouble, but they don't care because they've increased their wealth substantially. So even though the masses are suffering, the 1% has gotten wealthier and wealthier. Here in the United States, during the last 10 years, while the middle class's income and the income of everybody else is falling, the wealth of the 1% they've never been richer. So there's a problem here. Now, when you analyze this, the precariat and the wealth and the one world economic system, one world religion, one world government, and you reject the bias of the secular news media controlled by just 6 corporations, which essentially they are corporate-controlled media that are owned and run by the elite, and they only release information that the elite want released. But it is interesting to observe that when you get rid of your bias against God and against the Bible being true, because there is a massive bias in the media where even the Bible as history or biblical thought is not even incorporated in discussion, even though the Bible remains the world's most read book, and the Bible has had more influence on Western civilizations around the world than any other book or any other mechanism. And that in and of itself makes the Bible of incredible importance. But the bias, the irrational bias by the corporate-controlled media towards the Bible is so great, they won't even allow biblical thought to be even discussed. So their bias prevents them from accessing information. So the information, and specifically from the study of Bible prophecy, and I go into this in depth in my brand new book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, 2016-2017, and in the book, The Babylon Code, that I wrote with Troy Anderson, a Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist. I discuss the one world government, one world religion, and one world economic system, how God first warned about this in Genesis, and this first arose when Nimrod built the Tower of Babel and what is called Mystery Babylon. And Nimrod and his wife Semiramis built this society, and yet the warning by God is that God judges this society, because in their hearts God can see that that man's desire is to be God. And so God sees that this is a Luciferian endeavor, One of the primary reasons for the Tower of Babel, besides being an interdimensional portal and stargate, is that it was built to worship the host of heaven, a cult worship which is spread all over the world. And the heads of Babylon were all Luciferian and into the occult, as the very top tier of the elite today are often Luciferian and deeply involved in the occult. So God gives a warning. Now, of course, the elite don't want you to know this, so they don't allow it into the matrix of discussion by the news media. So the elite have plans again for a cashless society, microchip implants, and one world economic system, one world religion, and one world government. And the reason for that is total control. That gives them total control over planet Earth and total control of every man and woman. And the model for the slave race, because what they want to do is create a new global feudal state where they are the kings and queens, and we are the feudal slaves working on their plantation. But they're not going to come out and say that. So the model for this slave race, so the template of the slave race ruled by godmen in ancient Babylon, and then it moved through the Pharaoh God-King system of Egypt, and eventually into Europe with the divine right of kings concept. This is not talked about openly, but it is the belief system of the Illuminati and other secret societies that covertly operate through what is called the technocratic elite or scientific dictatorship. Again, I document all this in my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, 2016-2017, which, if you're interested, you can get more information about at paulmcguire.us. So at the highest levels of the ruling elite of society today, again, and many of them are Luciferian, participate in Luciferian or satanic rituals. Some and many supposedly belong to Illuminati bloodline families. And they're about the total control of the human race, where they will rule like gods. And they use a combination of occult or supernatural powers along with science, technology, religion, economic systems, and government. And then their primary mechanism for control is what we call the debt slavery system. Now, the debt slavery system is using the economic or monetary system as an occult or supernatural power, where individuals and nations become slaves through debt. And it is a monetary system that is based on illusion, or Arthur C. Clarke referred to science as magic, because a monetary system in the United States and the rest of the world is a debt slavery system, but it's based on illusion or magic or sorcery, and it utilizes alchemical magic. And going back into ancient history, the magicians believed in the Philosopher's Stone, which enabled them to transform worthless material like lead into gold. And that's what alchemical magic is. Well, our entire monetary system is based on the idea of printing money from nothing and then loaning it for interest. So, for example, the Federal Reserve, which is owned by the international ruling elite of banking families, as are the central banks in Europe, they utilize a form of magic because it's magical, because it requires the average person and the average government to believe in the power of their money as a magical instrument of exchange. But in rational reality, that money's worth nothing. See, that money is worth absolutely nothing, because what the Federal Reserve does is they print paper dollars that are backed by nothing. There's no gold, there's no silver, there are no tangible assets that back up our dollar currency. Just nothing. There's nothing there. It's a complete illusion. So they can print as many dollars as they wish. It costs them nothing. And they don't have to back it up with anything. I mean, think about if you had the power to do that in whatever business you would like to operate in. You get to print money from nothing, which means you could in a week you could print $1 billion, and then you would be worth $1 billion. And yet all you started out with was a nice printing press. But a week later you're worth $1 billion because you're not required to have anything of value to back up the printing of your money. That's why it's a fiat currency, a fraudulent currency. And that's why they can, at will, create, and they do, this notion that recessions and inflation and depressions and interest rates and all this stuff are due to some kind of random chance forces of the marketplace is a bunch of phooey. They create, at will, strategically, inflations, recessions, depressions, interest rates. They control it all based on nothing. It's whatever they decide, whatever will benefit them and their power and control the most. But, you know, the average American and even people who are supposedly educated have no idea about what I said. It would just be, it's so simple they can't believe it. Again, as I've shared many times before, you know, I regularly appeared on the largest cable news network TV shows in the nation. The biggest cable TV news shows I appeared on constantly. And I did countless economic debates with the leading economists who were the highest editors at like the Wall Street Journal and other prestigious financial publications. And most of them didn't even know the way the Fed really works. And those that did knew what the Fed was and how it really worked just kept their mouths shut. And so the American people, you know, the average American politician, I don't care how high they are on the totem pole, they don't understand how it works. Now some did, and they are no longer alive. So that's the way it works. See, it's a debt slavery system based on an occult system. It's what Mystery Babylon is all about. So what's interesting, when you reject the bias and you read, for example, Revelation chapter 13, where it says, no one can buy or sell without the mark of the beast. Once again, total control. But where all of this gets interesting is that in the mid-1600s, Sir Francis Bacon planned for America to be the new Atlantis and head of the New World Order. That's why on the back of the US dollar, you see on the left-hand side an Illuminati pyramid with the all-seeing eye of Horus, which is the all-seeing eye of Lucifer. You see this Illuminati symbol, and at the base of the pyramid, you read the words in Latin, Novus Order Seclorum, which means New Order of the Ages or New World Order. I mean, it couldn't be more in your face and blatant than it is. It's an Illuminati symbol of the hierarchical Luciferian system. And then on the right-hand side of the back of the US dollar, many people think that's an eagle. It's not an eagle, it's a phoenix, the legendary bird. The phoenix is a symbol of the New World Order. And in the legend of the phoenix is burned alive and rises from the ashes as this legendary bird, the phoenix. And so the idea is the New World Order will come alive as the old world order burns up. And for Francis Bacon knew that, and he and his followers obviously had influence on the artwork of the dollar as well as the architecture of the capital of the United States. Now, Atlantis, the Greek philosopher Plato was firmly convinced that the legendary island of Atlantis was a super civilization and it really existed. And the elite back in the times of Greece and through all the ruling elites throughout the centuries and the elite today are avid readers of Plato because he refers constantly to Atlantis, and his has so many books on the subject, like Plato's Republic. And in Plato's books, he describes how Atlantis was ruled by 10 philosopher kings, or some believe they were 10 god kings. 10 philosopher kings is this idea that a scientific dictatorship or a technocratic elite rule the masses. It's what Bertrand Russell believed in, and H.G. Wells and Aldous Huxley and others. And so that's the whole thesis of Atlantis, a super civilization ruled by 10 philosopher kings. Now, there are some researchers, and I go into this and I explain this in detail in A Prophecy of the Future of America, 2016-2017, who believe that the 10 philosopher kings who ruled Atlantis were actually god kings, or more specifically Nephilim, which were the product of interspecies breeding between fallen angels and human women. Now, that's pretty heavy. And I go into that in my other books too, like the first A Prophecy of the Future of America and numerous other books, again at paulmcguire.us. Now, according to the book of Enoch, which is referenced in the book of Jude, the biblical book of Jude, these fallen angels gave certain technology and science to mankind on Mount Hermon, which is near Phoenicia, and there is an area called Cydonia. Well, there's also an area called Cydonia on Mars, which contains what looks like several multi-sided pyramids and a triangular walled enclosure, a straight wall, a dome, and what first looked like an immense statue of a face, even though it may only be an eroded mesa. And it's located on the coast. And it's located, the original city. See, there's two Cydonias. There was the Cydonia in ancient Phoenicia, spelled S-D-O-N-I-A, or Sidon, near earthly Phoenicia. And then there's it's like a mirror city up there on Mars. There's the Cydonia region on Mars, C-Y-D-O-N-I-A. And there's a duplication of pyramid structures and other structures. So this earthly Cydonia, or Sidon, is located on the coast of ancient Phoenicia. Now, there is speculation among some researchers, and quite a few over the centuries, that there was some kind of ancient, even prehistoric connection between the Cydonia region of Mars and the Cydonia region of earthly Phoenicia. And it is possible, some research believe, that the fallen angels who descended on Mount Hermon had also resided on Mars, and they built the Martian pyramids. Because, you see, this gets into a whole area of study, but remember, Atlantis had super technology. The Nazis had super technology given to them by the Vrilya maidens, who were clairvoyants involved in the occult. The occult transference of knowledge was the basis of the building of the original Babylon and the Tower of Babel as an interdimensional portal or stargate. Its modern equivalent may very well be the CERN collider in Europe, where they, by firing at a very high velocity, subatomic particles at each other, they blow open an interdimensional portal. And the speculation is that this could possibly open a gateway for interdimensional beings from another dimension to enter the Earth. Now, that may sound far-fetched, but remember the Tower of Babel, and I document this quite thoroughly in my first book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, and then the all-new book with entirely all-new information that just came out, A Prophecy of the Future of America 2016-2017. I document the fact that the Tower of Babel was not only an interdimensional portal, a stargate, and so often among people who are uneducated and do very little research in Bible prophecy, and they just have an emotional opinion, but they've done zero homework. There's always great skepticism when you bring this up among the ill-informed and uneducated, and then I will point out to them, because they never bothered to study it for themselves, but they have an exaggerated opinion, I will point out to them that the actual word Babel or Babylon comes from the ancient word gate of the gods. So why would Babel and the Tower of Babylon refer to gate of the gods? What does that mean? Well, the gods are the fallen angels. And the fallen angels were the god men who impregnated human women and had interspecies breeding with human women and produced the Nephilim. And this is referred to again in Genesis, where it says the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, mated with human women. Looked upon human women with sexual desire and married them. There's varied translations, but that's essentially what happened. So, you bring this up to things like the Precariat and the Bilderberg Group and so on and so forth, and then you have this concept of the idea that Nimrod and the Nephilim were the ancestors of the families or bloodlines of the elite who rule the world through powerful secret societies. That's a thesis, a well-known thesis. So it's not an accident that we see two powerful control symbols in the back of the US dollar, the pyramid, and then on the right, an image of the legendary bird of the phoenix. And the phoenix, of course, is a symbol of the New World Order. And you will see prominent politicians, very prominent politicians in U.S. politics, wearing on their lapels a red phoenix bird. If you study the language and the rituals and the ceremonies of many of these high-level leaders in our nation, even the high-level leaders in Europe, it's filled with Illuminati and occult symbols. I mean, it's just all over the place. You can't miss it. So, when you go back at least 100 years or more, occult societies, Illuminati societies, published occult images of a phoenix bird in red, and below it were the words from Latin, ORDO of CHAO. So they had a red phoenix bird, and then the words below it were ORDO of CHAO, which is Latin, meaning order out of chaos. I mean, does it get any clearer? The New World Order is supposed to be established through order out of chaos. And the rise, now this is the key point here, I want you to pay attention. The rise of the precariat class and massive social unrest is a form of chaos. Remember, these things are not accidental. The precariat class, unlike what Guy Standing is saying, the precariat class did not rise by accident. It arose out of design. The current restructuring of people's personal economics and the shuffling of the deck of people's economic net worth and what kind of jobs they have. This is not an accident. We have an elite that rules this world. And so their goal is a new social order out of chaos. So the rise of a precariat is a key component in generating this chaos. Why? Well, you say, why would they do that? Because when you create the chaos, you can create a new order. Again, listen carefully. In order to create the new world order, you have to first create a chaos which will invite a new world order to establish total control. So the people will actually cry out for it. It's like that old expression, problem, reaction, solution. Or it's like the socialist, communist, activist term, manufactured crisis. You never let a good crisis go to waste. You create a crisis so that you can solve it. See? Okay? And so that's how they work. They've done this since the beginning of time. This will drive and fuel the coming of a one-world religion, a one-world economic system, and a one-world government. It will bring about an economic system where you cannot buy or sell without a microchip implant. It will also create the conditions for the world screaming out for a man or a leader to bring about peace, and then the world will be ready to welcome the Antichrist and the false prophet, as the Bible predicts, because they weren't interested in the real Christ. Now, back to this elite going to Mars. I know it sounds laughable, it sounds ridiculous, it sounds bizarre, and 20 years ago, people probably will think you're nuts for bringing it up now, even though major magazines are discussing it. I mean, 20 years ago, this whole thing would have been so preposterous, nobody in their right mind would have even considered it. And many still won't consider it. But the reality is that we live in a time where the elite are already building rockets for a very serious attempt at colonizing Mars. Now, here's the ironic thing. They may discover that it is already occupied. We live in a time when artificial intelligence and robots may destroy the jobs of millions of people on planet Earth. A cashless society would be implemented at any time, along with the mass distribution of microchip implants. I mean, microchip implants, this Bible prophecy, Revelation 13, the mark of the beast. People used to argue about this. And, hey, the RFID microchip implant has been developed since before 911. And then it went into heavy manufacturing overdrive after 911. Many different corporations are making different varieties of a microchip implant, biochip implant, nanochip implant with RFID transmitter. I mean, it's here. Computer-brain interfaces. It's here. So, I mean, that's not dreamland anymore. It's a vibrant technological reality. So we've moved from reality to artificial reality. And as Dorothy said to Toto in The Wizard of Oz, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. And we're not in Kansas. But where we really are is we're at the acceleration of the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And God has a plan for your life in the days and years to come. But you're not going to understand that plan unless you, first of all, take ownership of what's happening all around you and admit that changes are here. Number two is you receive Jesus Christ into your life as your Lord and Savior, and the Holy Spirit dwells in you. Number three is you seek the Lord. The Word of God says, as long as they sought the Lord, they continued to prosper. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all these things will be added unto you, such as the economic things. Despite the fact that the social engineers, the scientific dictatorship, the technocratic elite, they want to keep you in captivity like a slave. Despite that fact, Jesus Christ said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." And so it is not the will of God for you to live your life out like a slave. You can call out to God. Now, it doesn't mean you just passively do nothing, but you can cry out to God, and you can seek God's face, and God is willing to provide for you, to be your source. See, that's the problem. When I say source, capital S. The Pilgrims and Puritans, and this is one of the major themes in my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America 2016-2017, is not only to give this heavy information, but to equip people how to live supernaturally by connecting with the God of the Bible and allowing the God of the Bible to give them supernatural guidance, open doors for God to provide wealth, their needs met, etc. That's a hard stretch for the typical average American mind, Christian or atheist in America right now. But the founding fathers who established America, the Pilgrims and Puritans, they lived by that belief system. They lived by the belief system that God was their source, capital S. And so they didn't look to government, they didn't look to the technology, they didn't look to one particular crop or harvest or their agricultural farming methods to be their ultimate source. When they had a problem, they cried up to God and they sought the face of God until God answered. And so, despite the fact that we're talking about things which at first glance can be appear to be very fatalistic, it's not the intention of, listen to me carefully. If you don't hear anything else in this message today, please hear this. It is not the intention of the infinite personal living God of the universe of the Bible to create you and download in you so many apps, if you will, so many abilities and talents and gifts, desires and dreams. It's not the desire of God to create you with all this potential just so that you can be locked up as an unemployed captive, as a slave and a member of what the elite call the Precariat class. And, the Precariat class would kind of be the equivalent of the ancient slaves in ancient Egypt, the children of Israel, that movie with Carlton Heston, The Ten Commandments. So please hear what I'm saying. Again, this is so important. God didn't put all these desires in you to do things, to achieve things, to accomplish things, to live a certain kind of life, and then just snatch it away from you and laugh at you in cruelty and destine you irreversibly to living in some kind of damned precariat class. Well, that's what the elite have in mind for you. But that's not what God has in mind for you. So there is a way out. There's a way out to transcend the barriers. There's a way out of their matrix. There really is. But it's going to require something of you. If you're going to be your average so-called middle-class Christian, you probably will never find what I'm talking about. You're going to be some atheist or some person, smoking legalized marijuana all day long. And who bankrolled that? Look, I don't care if you smoke marijuana or not. I really don't. I mean, to me, besides the safety hazards of driving, yeah, okay, it's not the best thing for you to do, but I'm not like all hung up over it. But I'll tell you something. You need to maybe stop smoking the reefer for a moment and recognize who was behind the legalization of marijuana and what was their purpose. That's what you really need to find out. It was guys like the super billionaire Soros. He was one of the key players who funded this legalization of marijuana campaign. Now, did he and the other people do that for your good? No, they want you high, doped up, and stupid. Because as long as you're in a fog, man, they can keep you in captivity. So, see, marijuana is not about marijuana. Marijuana is about keeping you into captivity. So if you want to stay a slave, just smoke that dope and be a slave. Have a bag of potato chips and the munchies, you know. God has something. This is not about some legalism and some phony puritanical religion where, oh, don't do this and don't do that. That's not what it's about. You're missing the whole boat. It's about whether or not you're going to stay a slave. And if you want to escape the matrix, you have to unplug from the matrix. And then you seek God. Not in the, when I say seek God, I'm not talking about in the tradition or template of unfortunately, what you have seen Christianity become degraded to in our nation right now, which is almost like a McDonald's-like franchise of short Bible verses and spiritual junk food. I'm not talking about that, man. I'm talking about having a radical, revolutionary, mind-blowing, mind-changing experience and personal relationship with God. But you got to find out what that means. You know, you got to walk through the door that's before you. Jesus said, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hears me and opens the door, then I will come into him or her and fellowship with them or sup with them." In other words, or when he knocks at the door, which he's doing right now with your heart, and you can hear him now, and you open that door, he comes into your heart and has a personal relationship with you. But then he also sets you free. This is Paul McGuire. You can get more information, free videos, etc., etc. Go to paulmcguire.us, and if you want to know more about the topics I have discussed, you can go to paulmcguire.us or read the books like A Prophecy of the Future of America, 2016-2017. I'm Paul McGuire, and I will see you later.